Hello, welcome to Smash Hit Sports. I'm Cody, that's Nick, and we just watched 5 full days of college football. We're actually recording this Monday night, so the Florida State Boston College game is going on right now. Boston College is up 7-0, so we may have something to talk about after this. But after 5 full days of college football, my body feels rejuvenated, rejoiced. I also feel like I got the shit beat out of me for 3 straight hours watching that Notre Dame game, but we'll talk about it. Before we get started, make sure to like the video. It's a huge help to the podcast, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Nick, we will start our week one recap with you. It was the first game of the day. It was the biggest matchup of the day. There were two ranked matchups, Notre Dame and Texas A&M and Georgia Clemson, and I will give you the floor. What are your thoughts after that Georgia Clemson game?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, Cody. I have a lot of thoughts, and I will try to keep it, as brief as I can. But when I say that, I'm going to be going on a tangent. So, my first reaction: I watched this game with 11 of my fraternity brothers, pledge brothers, diehard Clemson fans. We're watching this game. At the end of the game, you can't help but think, like, we looked as incompetent and inept offensively as we have the past 3 years. Everything that you really would have wanted to see different did not occur. And we were saying to ourselves, this is kind of the first time that we're all thinking maybe it's completely over, because you can think like, okay, after Trevor Lawrence, Dabo has DJU. DJU's, he's no good. He's losing to Boston College right now. He's garbage. But he was still getting 10 wins. Dabo's still getting 10 wins. Clemson's in the Orange Bowl. They win the ACC in 2022. It's been bad, but it hasn't been tragic. And it's been like, well, we still have, according to 24/7 Sports, the fifth most talented roster in all of college football. We're going to be fine. It's still Clemson. It's just, can we get to a national championship again? Now I'm thinking that era is just over. I know it's Georgia, but that first play of the game, it's drawn up really well. Garrett Riley, it's like a motion play action where you have a running back going into the flat. You dump it off to him, easy dump off pass, and Maffa's going to get like 10, 12, 15 yards. And Klubnik throws it in the dirt. It's like a terrible throw. You have Adam Randall killing drives because he's lining up illegally, where Clemson gets a first down. Doesn't matter. Call it back. Like one play maybe in Georgia territory the entire first half, and it was at like the 49-yard line, and that was penalized as well. So we moved back after that play. Everything, we looked like Iowa last year offensively. Yes, this is against the Georgia Bulldogs defense, the number one team in the world. But there's a difference, man. Like, I feel like you could think like, oh, well, if Clemson could have worked out the kinks, if a couple different things went their way, they play smarter. They don't run QB draws on 3rd and 17 or whatever. They don't try to run read options in the red zone. They just get a little smarter. Clemson actually, played Georgia pretty close in the first half. Maybe they are a good team. No, because that's what it's been like for 4 years now. The ineptitude has stayed the same, to the point where I am no longer willing to believe that it will change. And if it doesn't change, it's just going to be another torturous, frustrating season. And I don't even feel like I have the excuse of, well, we played the number one team in the country in Atlanta. It was 80% Georgia fans. Like, everyone knew it was going to be a blowout, blah, blah, blah. I don't feel like I have that excuse, because I don't think Georgia played near their best game. Because, they started playing well when Clemson's defense they needed like freaking oxygen tanks, because they were out on the field the entire game, especially in the second half. They did all they could. But of course, by the end there, when you can't get a first down, you can't control the clock at all. Georgia's talented enough to take advantage of that. They're going to go score points. 34-3 looks like a blowout. I think there's nothing really that was like oh wow, Georgia is this just juggernaut of a team that's going to do that to a bunch of teams. Like a lot of people are saying, a lot of people are coping like that. I think if anything, that Georgia team looked more beatable than I was expecting going into that game, and we still lost 34-3. It's insane. I think the game has passed Dabo by. I've been reluctant to admit that because I think that there are benefits to not taking transfers because it helps with recruiting. And I like it. To me, it was like, okay, I still think we can do it without. I think the game is past Dabo by, and I don't think we should fire him. I don't want to fire him. I don't want him to retire. But if he doesn't adjust, I think retirement's probably the best option. You look at Coach K, college basketball. He was like vehemently against one and done freshmen for the longest time. Duke basketball was never going to have it. But then he was like, this is a failing operation. If I continue that way, I'm absolutely going to start allowing one and done freshmen. And boom, Duke doesn't skip a beat, and they're great, and they're still great even without Coach K, because that's just how it is. Cooper Flagg, he's one and done. Easy. But Villanova, who's very similar to Clemson when you think about how they won a national championship in the 80s and then won in 2016 and 2018. Clemson's the same exact way, right? Jay Wright, he has a specific way of coaching that he was like, okay, everything's changing. I am not willing to do this anymore. He retires. Villanova takes this massive downfall where the benefit of him retiring is negative for Villanova's sake. So that's why I'm like, I don't want Dabo to retire. But if you're not willing to adjust, if you're not willing to take transfers in at all, it feels like that's the option, or else you are just embarrassing the program and the name. And we're going to be playing LSU, in a home and home to start the season next year and the year after that. I have no belief in our ability to win that game. We haven't won a home. We beat Georgia Tech home opener 2022, but we lost the year before that. We lost last year. We lost this year. Like, things aren't going in the right direction, and there's no more rationalizing that Clemson can do it their own way. That is just not going to exist. He has to adjust. You look at Penn State. This will be my final point because, again, I could ramble on for so long. But you look at Penn State. There were concerns about Penn State in the same way there were concerns about Clemson, and those two teams were in a very similar spot because Penn State had the number one quarterback in the 2022 class, Drew Aller. Clemson has the number two guy in that class, Kate Klubnik. Both of them underperformed so far, first 2 years of them playing. Last year, not great, not great in the big moment. Penn State looks great, and then they get dogged by better teams. Clemson, kind of the same vibe. Penn State, from what I saw against West Virginia, rowdy crowd, decent team, and as you said, their defense is actually pretty good. Penn State looked so legit. They looked like they took that step. They took that jump. And it's because they're willing to take in transfers. They're willing to reorganize the depth chart in the offseason, figure things out. It's just the way we're doing it, it's not going to freaking work. And that was, I don't want to hear the, it's Georgia and it was a close first half. It was bad. It was really a nightmare scenario, the worst it could have been. And I could tell it was going to happen after the first drive. Georgia could have sat down on the grass on defense in that first half. They could have just played with the grass, playing with the freaking dandelions. Clemson wouldn't have gotten a first down. They wouldn't have gotten a first down. Georgia they didn't have to do anything. And that's a telltale sign that this is not a talent issue. This is an execution issue. It's a coaching issue. Everything is tragic about that game. And I just don't know what the solution is, but I guess I'll leave it with the fact that the ACC just looked pretty freaking bad as well. So you never know. It's a long season, but I'm not happy about anything. I'm not happy about anything.
Yeah. So my takeaways from this game, when Georgia says, fuck you, they are the best team in the country and it's not close. When they said, fuck you, like it's over, we're done fucking around in the second half, they looked as good or better than any college football team I've ever seen for 30 minutes. They looked outstanding. The other thing is, I feel terrible for you because what I watched out of Clemson was Big Ten West football.
Yeah.
That was what I watched out of Clemson. It was Wisconsin, it was Nebraska, it was Iowa, it was Big Ten West football. And it's almost worse that the ACC is bad. Because guess what? I'm looking at Clemson's schedule right now, and they could still win out. There is nothing on that schedule that scares me. At Florida State, they're down 7 to Boston College right now, and they lost to Georgia Tech. Like, NC State, they looked like dog shit. Virginia Tech, we're going to get to them. South Carolina, they looked like ass. There isn't a single team on that schedule that scares me if I am Clemson. I think they have one of the easiest schedules in the country from now until the rest of the way out. So I will say that it sucks that you guys played a fucking absolute – you played the Hulk this weekend, and you got your ass kicked. It sucks, but it is what it is. The transfer portal part, it wouldn't bother me as much, but the problem is he's recruited the same thing on offense for 4 straight years, and it hasn't worked for 4 straight years. You guys haven't had a decent receiver on that team since Justin Ross or Amari Rodgers. And Justin Ross didn't even play his last year because he was so banged up with injuries. And Amari Rodgers was like 25 by the time that he hung it up. Like, truly, you haven't had a really elite wide receiver since T. Higgins. Like, until you get some elite weapons on offense, you're going to struggle.
Okay.
You're going to struggle.
Counterpoint to that is, and this was a huge issue that we all had, is we recruited 2 5-star wide receivers. Like, TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco looked great throughout the offseason. TJ Moore was the MVP of the Elite 11, whatever they do for all the recruits. I don't remember, but he was the MVP of that. Bryant Wesco looks insane. These guys are stretch the field 5-star guys, akin to a Jeremiah Smith in the sense that it's like Ohio State has this stacked roster, and they're throwing Jeremiah Smith in as their wide receiver 1 as a true freshman, but we're not giving snaps to Bryant Wesco or TJ Moore, and we're putting Cole Turner out for these go routes that we're like taking once every quarter. We're like, fuck it, we'll throw a go route here, one-on-one coverage. Cade's underthrowing it, whatever, but you're throwing it to Cole Turner, who's like this, like, he's fast, but he's like a 5'11" white guy. Like, you saw what Roddy White said on Twitter. He's like, Clemson has too many white guys out there. He's getting a lot of slack for it. I don't think he should. I don't think he should get any.
I don't think he's wrong.
I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's wrong. Like, Jake Brenningstool's he's a great player. And you know, that whatever, but it's just the concept of like, we don't look as athletic. We don't look as competent. We look sometimes like we're not even trying. And it just is insane to watch. But we have guys that could change it, and we're not really giving them a chance. And I'm willing to bet that if we do give them the chance, we're going to be running in dig routes and these like crazy short play mesh concepts and you know, slants and stuff, screens, because I don't trust this offense to actually like try to move the ball down the field efficiently. Or if they do try, it's gonna fail, right? That's that freaking mindset of like, it's just not gonna work. I said to you last week, and I said all Clemson needs to do is just punch the ball into the end zone, because once we get to the red zone, it's a disaster. A lot of the times we have these offensive drives, we beat ourselves up. We just need to get out of that mindset. And once we do, Clemson's going to be a good team. I believe that. I have them winning the ACC and making the playoff. And we didn't score a touchdown, and we didn't get out of our own way. So that mindset has probably now gotten worse. So it's a blessing, yes, that we have this easy schedule. But like, what really is the blessing of maybe getting that 4 seed in the college football playoff? And just how you have to play, like, let's say Ohio State gets the 5 and then you play them in the 4-5. I don't know, man. Like, like, I'd be happy about it because for the brand's sake and the money's sake, it'd be good. But I think we'd get crushed in that game. And I don't think we're going to look good at all in some of these wins that we're going to pick up. And we'll probably drop 1 or 2 more. So I don't know. But it's not without hope. I'll give you that I am not sitting here saying we lost to Georgia in Atlanta. 80% of the fans are Georgia fans. and and now the season's over. It's the first year of a 12-team playoff, and we lost to the number one team in the country. Who cares? Happened to Oregon 2 years ago. They would have made the 12 team, So
Yep.
not without hope, but really it's a lot of bad omens out there. And it's just not exciting in the same way that if you're an Iowa Hawkeye fan and you're like, oh, we got a good team, but it's going to be fucking brutal to watch. It's going to be brutal to watch. That's how I feel about this Clemson team this year. It's just not going to be fun. I'm not going to have fun doing it.
That does make it tough. All right, moving on. Other noon game, Penn State, West Virginia. My takeaway from this is I'm not down on West Virginia. I still think they're going to be about an 8-4 team, like a solid team in the Big 12. I think they'll be okay. What I am going to say is Penn State looked like a fucking team that's going to compete. Penn State looked like a team that's sick and tired of being pushed around a little bit. And I understand that all of the Penn State haters are going to go, well, this was against West Virginia. We'll see what they could do against an Ohio State or whatever. And I get that. That's fine. But this Penn State team, the way that they played, I don't think they're going to drop a regular season game that they quote unquote shouldn't. And I think they're going to make the playoff. And I think we're going to find out because they looked damn good. Their defense looked outstanding.
It's incredible.
Drew, I understand that, like, yeah, I was against a defense that maybe isn't the best in the world, but I'm still fairly high on West Virginia's defense. But he made some throws that were NFL level throws. Like he had some out routes. That touchdown that he had at the end of the first half, unbelievable. Yep. He made some damn good plays. So Penn State looked good.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing where you're saying, yeah, West Virginia's. It's not like you're going into the big house playing Michigan with Michigan's defense. It's still different whether or not we think West Virginia has a lot of good pieces on that defense. You could see the difference. Like, let's say you threw on Arizona versus New Mexico, a game that defense wasn't played in the slightest, especially in the first half, right? Like literally zero of it was played. You look at that Penn State West Virginia game, you're like, the plays that Penn State was making on offense were earned. They weren't handed to them by just terrible defensive schemes and a lack of talent and bad coaching. No, Penn State went out and earned those 34 points against a team on the road, right? Like a good West Virginia team on the road that they looked pretty damn dominant in. That game, if I'm lightening the mood, because we're not talking Clemson anymore. That's it.
Yep.
I feel great about my pick for Penn State to get to maybe even win the Big Ten and get a top 4 spot. I feel great about that, right? Because I was worried going into it. The line was moving. There was a little reverse line movement. Things were shady. People were starting to be like, West Virginia, they could win this game. It wasn't even close. I mean, Penn State gave them the business. And again, this is their year. This is their time to do it. This is that recruiting class they had 3 years ago was built for this season. And they're going to go out there and get it because they understand, this is our chance. 12-team playoff, Penn State. I feel very, very confident at least about them making the playoff. And I think they could win the Big Ten.
Yep. Your take looks damn good there. Speaking of bad takes, I thought Florida was going to be fucking competent against Miami. I have never seen a team come in less prepared for a game. They shit their pants. That was disgraceful.
At home.
That was disgraceful football.
Yeah.
That Miami bullied them for 4 consecutive quarters in the swamp. I have never been like where this Florida program should be. I would say Florida, in my mind, is a top 15 program in the country in terms of what they have, like support-wise, stadium-wise, their history, the whole 9 yards. I think that's a top 15 program in the country. And to see where they are at is disgraceful. That was a shameful performance against Miami. The Miami players dapping up the Florida recruits that were on the sideline after the game. Awful. Miami, on the other hand, Miami looks like a real I know that we do this every year and say that Miami's back. And I know that I said that I was not going to jump on that train. I'm real close to jumping on that train. They looked they looked as legitimate as any team did this weekend. And truly, they were the only ACC team that looked like they belonged. So shout out to Miami. They play their asses off. Billy Napier, your ass is gone in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So
I
enjoy
mean,
your buyout.
two things. One, the Billy Napier, it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. He's like 11-16 right now as head coach, and they fired Dan Mullen, who brought them to like multiple New Year's Six games in a row. He had like he was always ranked, that Dan Mullen Florida team, and they fire Mullen and bring in Billy Napier, who has just fucking sunk this program into the abyss. I think I'm bad as a Clemson fan right now. Florida is in a terrible spot. They're going to lose out on recruits. If they don't fire Napier right now, it is just like they could win 2-3 games this year. Their schedule's that hard. It's a disaster in Gainesville. Now, Miami, I think with that being said, because like Billy Napier, I think is a bad enough coach where I think the players are almost like
Bro, there was a player who put on his private Instagram story, man, fuck this team. After week 1, dude. Bro, that's week 1.
It's like tragic shit going on, and Billy Napier's like fighting with the freaking mascot in the hallway after the game. I don't know if you saw that, but Albert the alligator, like they had to be separated. Napier and Albert the alligator were like literally fighting. Like crazy shit where these players laughable. Like, yes, they're not trying for this coach. They're not motivated by this coach. So Miami, I think we have to take that win with a grain of salt. Even though I'm a guy who I had Miami going 11-2, I had them finishing like 7th or 8th in the college football playoff. I really like this Miami team. It's the best quarterback they've had in so long. And they're going to be really good. But we have to take the win with a grain of salt because they were playing a team that was probably to an extent trying to lose. Like there was just a complete lack of competence on that Florida sideline. So I don't want to speak too soon on how high I am on Miami, and I think a lot of people are overreacting a little bit in that sense, just because it's like, oh, they beat Florida in Florida. Like no one thought that was good. The spread was 2, and they won by 24. Like now, I mean, we got to see a little bit more of Miami, and we'll have to see.
The first home opener Florida has lost since 1989.
Yeah, and it wasn't close. Like this, wild. I think that showed me a lot more about Florida than it did about Miami, but only because I already thought Miami was going to be good. They just showed me that I was right. They are going to be good, but how good? Are they going to be, beating SEC teams 41-17? No, unless maybe they are, but we don't know. So we'll have to see with Miami. But yeah, pretty stinker of a game. I honestly didn't watch much of it at all.
That's fair. That is fair. All right, Nick, I'm going to give you the floor first, and then I will clean up on this one. Tell me how good my team was. Tell me how good my team was this weekend.
I was really impressed. I was also, I will say, disappointed in what I saw from Connor Wegman, a guy I was talking about, like he was a Heisman considerate before his injury last year. People were saying like Connor Wegman was going to be, like one of these like sneaky, really good quarterbacks, and he looked really bad. I mean, he had 90 yards, 2 picks, no touchdowns going into the fourth. Like deep into the fourth. And a lot of that you can credit to Notre Dame's defense. Notre Dame looked really well put together. I'm extremely impressed with them. But it's another one of those scenarios where I'm like, I'm a little bit more disappointed in Texas A&M as far as like, what they potentially could have been in that game. They just weren't really that close. And I still think Texas A&M's a good team. It's not a Florida situation. Texas A&M, it was a close freaking game. Notre Dame, I think, looked exactly how I thought they would look. I had them losing one game, and it was this game to Texas A&M that they could have lost, I suppose. Now I'm thinking Notre Dame could very well go 12-0 and be the 5 seed in the college football playoff. I had them as the 6, right? Like I feel the same way I did that this Notre Dame team is legit AF, and Marcus Freeman is going to be a breakout, top 5 coach in the country after this year because, sometimes it takes a little bit, right? You guys were mad at him at first. You lose to Marshall. Things are looking really good. You look very well put together. I would be really happy if I were a Notre Dame fan.
Out of all the games that I've watched in recent years under Notre Dame. That fourth quarter where after they tied it up at 13, I thought, fuck, it's another one of those games. We're going to blow this. We're not going to do what we need to do. The last 8 minutes of that game where we drive down the field methodically, not big plays, but we just play after play after play, did the right things, pushed down the field, scored that touchdown. Jeremiah Love, hell of a play, and then played outstanding defense to force the stop on that next possession, and then did exactly what we needed to do and ran the clock out and kicked that field goal. I haven't seen a Notre Dame team make the right decisions like that in a long time. That felt incredible. I still have a little bit of concerns, right? A lot of penalties, but we talked going into this game about how young Notre Dame's offensive line was, and there were times where they looked bad, and Texas A&M's defensive line ate at times.
But they have a great defensive line. Great.
But damn it, yeah. And I'll say this: I'm not out of the woods yet in terms of, now, obviously, my hopes are sky high. I'm cautiously optimistic that this could be one hell of a year. I still have a little bit of a worry about our offense and our receivers and really, having some big explosive plays. But God damn it, it felt good to win one of these. It felt good to win one of these.
Yeah, big game, primetime game in the hardest place to play, which, not saying it's not the hardest place to play at all when I do that, but that's an insanely impressive win. It is.
Out of all the teams that went out there and got like a really impressive, like Miami went on the road to Florida, but that team, it wasn't good. Georgia played Clemson, but that game was not on the road. That was basically a home game. Like, yes, it was neutral site, but that's basically a home game.
And Georgia really like impressive win, yes, but honestly, if that's what Clemson is this year, then I'm not even as impressed as I realistically thought I would be. So Notre Dame, I had Texas A&M winning that game. Again, half of me, maybe even a little more than half of me, thinks that I'm more disappointed in what I saw from Texas A&M. But yes, Notre Dame, they did a very impressive thing this weekend. Very impressive.
Let's talk about Notre Dame's second win of the weekend. And that's when Brian Kelly lost. I saw Brian Kelly lost 2 games for the SEC this weekend, because if he coached at Notre Dame, he would have lost to Texas A&M, and then he also lost the game for LSU. That game is every ounce of big game Brian Kelly that I've ever seen. It is exactly what I've always been talking about. It is a continued mismanagement of his elite talent. It is continued mismanagement of the actual game itself. Kyron Lacey was absolutely incredible in the first half, and you could not find him with a fucking telescope in the second half. And that's all on Brian Kelly. And then afterwards being like, I have never been more upset this is the first time that I've been mad at this team since I've been here. Motherfucker, it's you. You're the problem, dude. Take accountability for once. He has never done that. He never did it at Cincinnati. He never did it at Notre Dame. And now he is continuing to not do it at LSU. It did not shock me in the slightest that USC won that game. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a little bit wider of a margin after that first half. It like, if USC had made that field goal at the end of the first half where they should have, that was a chip shot, that game could have been even further apart than what it was.
Yep.
That is 5 consecutive opening season losses for LSU. They have not won an opening season game since Joe Burrow in 2019.
Yep.
And then, like you said, guess what? They opened the season next year with Clemson. I have zero faith in Brian Kelly. He is a really good coach. He is the barometer for what a good coach is. Because if you're better than Brian Kelly, you're probably a great coach. And if you were Brian Kelly at worst, you're probably really good. And that's all he will ever be, because he refuses to take accountability. He doesn't do it. He won't do it. He'll never do it. Congrats to USC and Lincoln Riley. That is a hell of a win. And I think a lot of people are going to shit on Brian Kelly, myself included. But USC deserves some credit here. They played a great game. They played a sound game that, like, Zachariah Branch looked good. Like, their wide receivers look great. Their special teams look solid. Their defense looked very improved.
Oh,
Nussmeier is a talent. Kyron Lacey is a talent. There's a lot of talent on that LSU offense, and they held them to a very respectable amount of points. USC, I'm not going to fully get on the hype train for them, but I think they are going to be competing for a playoff spot at some point this season.
I'm on the hype train. I'm gonna say that I'm on the USC hype train. I was assuming that you were just gonna bash Brian Kelly. I was gonna hop in and be like, well, USC deserves some credit because LSU didn't play a bad game. It was mismanaged at points, absolutely, and very easily could have been won. I mean, they drove down the field pretty easily, down 3, like at the very end of the game, and really just stalled out because of kind of just inept play calling and just an acceptance of taking 3 points and tying the game up. It was stupid. But Miller Moss, I think, is Heisman candidate-esque in this sense now. I think that offensive line deserves a round of applause because you moved Jonah Monham back into center. Right now he's playing center. Bunch of things moving around. People are like, I don't know what it's going to be, but it was really bad before. That's all anyone knew, is that it was really fucking bad with Caleb Williams last year, and it looked great. It looked great. You know, we had guys like Harold Perkins on the other side, and I didn't really see that much dominance on that end from LSU. I thought that that I was more impressed with USC than I was disappointed in LSU. I think LSU, you can honestly chalk it up to Brian Kelly just not having it in him to win that game. He just something about him. He has a curse on him. I don't know what it is. I was going to say this in my Clemson rant that, you know, Dabo is getting warranted hate and has been getting hate that's unwarranted for a long time, in my opinion. But it's almost to the point where Dabo Swinney is not respected or treated like he is, you know, a legend of the game,
multiple-time national champion,
probably like the most, probably the best coach as far as like what he's accomplished, like in college football right now. He's 54 years old, and he is a legend of the game. He's changed the economy of Clemson. Like, he is just a legend that needs to be respected as one of the greats of all time. And it seems to me that the media really puts him in that Brian Kelly sphere right now, where it's like, oh yeah, he's just a fucking idiot dodo who does not, you know, he shouldn't be here anymore. It's like, Brian Kelly gets hate. I think that's warranted because what has he done? But there's I think that's just a different scenario because of that point exactly. Brian Kelly was always going to lose this game. We both picked USC. It's just a different world. You give Brian Kelly his hate, but lay off Dabo. He's a good guy.
USC has Utah State next week and then a bye, and then they go into the Big House to play Michigan. And I'm going to tell you that is going to be must-watch TV. Must-watch TV.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into winners, losers, and dogs of the week, Home Field, shout out Home Field Apparel. They make the best college merch in the game. Go support your squad with the most unique merch that you can buy. It's absolutely incredible. If you have a team, Home Field Apparel has merch for them. They have apparel for everyone. Use code NICK15, get 15% off your first purchase at Home Field. Link in the description of this video, or if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, it is in our social media bios. That being said, Nick, who's your winner of the week?
Yeah, winner of the week, I would be tempted to give it to Notre Dame, but I think given the context of everyone around them, I think you have to give it to Miami. You know, like the fact that they look around, they're looking at the ACC and they're thinking, oh, Clemson looks bad. Florida State looks bad. NC State looks bad. The only team that I think looked as good as I was thinking they would look against the team they played was Louisville. And
they also played
like Austin P or something, right? So, yeah. And I'm looking at Syracuse, and it's 10-9 at like half. I'm like, oh God, it's gross. Syracuse ended up playing pretty well in that game. But if I'm Miami, I'm not scared of them. If I'm Miami, I'm feeling really, really good. And we could have been talking about something so different, right? We could have been talking about, same old Miami. You go into Florida, tough place to play, but they're 0-1. We were wrong about them. They're not going to make the playoff, blah, blah, blah. But no, they are in a contextually fantastic spot after just one weekend of college football. They have to be ecstatic.
Yep. I'm glad you picked Miami. If you didn't pick Miami, I absolutely was going to. Since you did, my winner of the week, Notre Dame fans, because we got to see our team win, Brian Kelly lose, and that is a win for our program. Losers of the week. My loser of the week is the ACC as a whole, because you are fighting for your life right now if you were the ACC. And the two teams that you are supposed to say, hey, these are our flag bearers. These are the teams that you want, Florida State and Clemson. Like, hey, these are the teams who, like, other conferences are trying to poach. Yeah, they're 0-2.
No, yeah,
and
that's not
currently
happening.
Potentially on the road to be 0-3 in the first 2 weeks of football. The ACC looks like the fourth best of the Power Four conferences not like by a little bit, by a significant margin. So my loser of the week is the ACC as a whole.
Dude, I mean, there were moments where I was thinking these MAC teams look better than these ACC teams. Like, I'm watching Thursday where NC State's down to Western Carolina, and I throw on the Bowling Green game or whoever it is. I'm like, oh, wow, this team's like a well-oiled machine right now. And they're both playing. You could say, like, well, the MAC team's playing an FCS school. They're all playing the same exact type of school. Like, NC State should have been crushing in that game. It took them literally like 50 minutes to get there. It was insane. I think that's good. I'll get more specific with it. That my loser of the week is Virginia Tech / Virginia Tech fans, because if you want to talk about underratedly delusional fans akin to the Cowboys and teams, fan bases that are really easily able to convince themselves that this is going to be the year. Virginia Tech's up there more than people would think, and it's just always wrong. And we got, I mean, you got bamboozled pretty hard.
I got bamboozled, hoodwinked, fucking led astray.
Yeah,
I was flabbergasted with that game. That was first off. Shout out Diego Pavia, played his dick off. That dude
was great and
balled the fuck out.
And like I remember like some people on Twitter and like Lee Corso even, they were like, oh, Vanderbilt money line, you got to do it. I'm like, what are they talking about? But the only reason I would say you got bamboozled more than I is that I was weary of the absolute blind attachment that people were having to this Virginia Tech team, with the logic really just being, well, they returned every starter, but they hadn't proven anything really at all. Their bowl game last year was like close against a not great team. And I was like, this is too much. This is too much hype, too much love for a team for me not to be like, this is a fade the public spot. This team's not going to be that good. But then I still had them winning 10 games. I mean,
same.
Like, still was like, that's a 10-2 team. Their schedule's easy. If you're going to lose to Vanderbilt, you're not going to win 10 games. I don't make the rules. It's not going to fucking happen. And the fans there, I mean, I'm a Virginia guy. Like, I almost went to Virginia Tech. I was getting propaganda shoved down my throat from these guys. Like Virginia Tech playoff lock, this is going to be a historic year. And after that loss, I mean, the absolute shambles that these people were in, it was historic. Like I've never seen a sadder fan base, because all that loss really does, even in a 12-team playoff, you lose to Vanderbilt, that's a loss that's like, it counts as 2. It's a 2-loss loss right there. So they're in bad shape.
Yep. All right, my dog of the week. 20 carries, 267 yards, and 6 touchdowns. My dog of the week is Ashton fucking Genty. That man put Boise State on his back. He ran until the wheels literally fell off. He had to leave the game because he was cramping. That man put up historical numbers this weekend. He is the best running back in the country. He is the best running back as a draft prospect in college football. He should lead the conversation for the Doak Walker Award. Unbelievable performance. Ashton Genty is my dog of the week.
Yeah, it's awesome. I actually have a bet on Ashton Genty to win the Doak Walker, and I placed that. I feel really good about it right now.
You should.
Weird game though, 56-45 against Georgia Southern. A little concerning, you could say, for Boise State, but maybe just a weird game. My dog of the week, it's got to be Tetairoa McMillan. I was floored watching this game. That was, to me, the best game of the week, and I don't care. I don't care about all these great matchups. That was the most fun I've had watching college football this year for sure, in a while, because I'm always watching Clemson. This guy is so good at football, and I had the luxury of being with not casual college football fans. I like my friends watch, but you got to admit there are a lot of people out there that you know, that I know, that people listening know, that weren't familiar with his game at all, because it's an Arizona player playing Pac-12 after dark. They just don't, they're not hip. So I was like, oh my God, watch out for this guy. He's going to be a top 10 pick. They were like, what the? I've never heard of him in my life. Like, what are you talking about? And multiple times during the game, they're like, that's the best player I've ever seen in my life. Like, this guy he is going to be the best wide receiver in the NFL. And I'm like,
10
yeah,
for 304 and 4 touchdowns.
dude. And like
just
some insane catches over the shoulder. Like, how is he getting his feet down? He's just making New Mexico look silly. It's New Mexico. I don't care, dude. He looked so good.
Video game numbers.
He looked so good.
Video game numbers.
He's going to be awesome.
Yep. All right. This section, sound the alarm. We're going to make this real quick. You don't have to give a ton of explanation, Nick. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a team, and you're going to tell me on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most concerned, all systems like we are concerned, 1 being not concerned at all. I want you to sound the alarm on this team. Oregon beat Idaho 24-14.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that more later, so I won't give any explanation. But I would say, maybe a light 4, maybe a strong to light 4 for me.
Okay.
There's reason to be concerned, but we'll talk about it later.
Thursday night, Colorado 31, North Dakota State 26.
I'm gonna say 3 for reasons that the expectations put on Colorado are a lot of media based, and I don't know how much Colorado fans were like this, oh, we're going to crush them and we're going to win 10 games. Like, I still think Colorado, what I saw from Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, insanely impressive. They could get a bowl game still. I absolutely believe that.
South Carolina 23, Old Dominion 19.
I'm going to go 8 there. I don't know if South Carolina fans were saying 6, anything more than 6 wins. I think 6 wins was like the like, oh, please just get there. I think we can. I don't think after now, I don't think any of them think that they can get to 6 wins. I did say last episode, best bets. I was like Old Dominion plus 20 if I had to throw something out, maybe. So
you nailed it.
The money line was looking juicy for a while too. So yeah, I would say 8 concerned, not going to be a good year.
Yep. Keeping it moving. UCLA 16, Hawaii 13.
It's tough. Maybe a 5 because it's similar to South Carolina in the sense that like no one was going in thinking UCLA was going to be great. But like, God, they looked really bad. They still have talent on that team, so you got to be concerned. 5.
Okay, and then Michigan 30, Fresno State 10.
I'm not sounding the alarm, but I am. That's one where I'm like, uh-oh. So I don't know, like 6. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will talk Michigan later, I guess too. But yeah, 6.
I agree with pretty much everything that you said there. I have no issues. No issues. All right, we're going to do some listener hot takes. So we'll do 3 or 4 of these. These were submitted via Instagram. So if you want to get yours in for next week's show, make sure that you follow on Instagram and reply to our stories. Here's there are some interesting ones in here, but Oregon should drop out of the top 10.
I think that's crazy, but again, what was the spread of that game? Do you know?
I'm gonna say like 40,
It was probably
probably.
something crazy, right? And they win
Yeah.
by 10. Idaho. I mean, you can't drop them like that. Like that's just one, not how the AP poll works, not how I really think it should. But so that's a little crazy if you ask me.
Okay. This is a team we have not talked about yet. Nico Iamalava for Heisman.
I don't think we could. They played Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I don't think.
dude, he had 350 yards at the half.
Yeah, no, he's unreal. But like I remember Trevor Lawrence first year starting playing teams like Chattanooga, he had like 450 yards at the half, 10 touchdowns, and he never sniffed a Heisman. I don't know if I'm willing to say that, but that's definitely less of a hot take by far because Josh Heupel's system, you never know, but it's tough in the SEC. So, well, moderately hot.
Miller Moss will be a Heisman finalist.
I don't think that's hot. And if that was the prompt for Nico, I don't think that's hot either. I think saying that, winning the Heisman, that's tough to say. But Miller Moss, I think, for me, I would put him in like my top 6 guys for the Heisman right now. I mean, I'm expecting a lot from him, and he's showed out already.
Yeah, he was outstanding. And then last one, Dylan Raiola will have Nebraska winning 9 games.
That's tough. I don't know what Nebraska did. I didn't watch any of the game. I couldn't tell you based on his performance. I couldn't tell you, but just Nebraska winning 9 games as a whole, I don't think that's that crazy. I mean, but maybe moderately hot.
There were more highlight throws from Dylan Raiola in that game than there were during the entire Scott Frost era at Nebraska.
Yeah.
He looked good. He looked really good.
I didn't watch at all and haven't seen anything on social media or anything. But I trust your word. I'm going to say that's semi hot, barely.
Okay. That being said, Nick talked about some bets that we had placed earlier. I was making bets all weekend. If you guys want my betting guide, it is in the link in my bio. It's $20. It's a phenomenal tool. We crushed a ton of bets this weekend. I hit USC. We hit a whole bunch. So not only are you like, if you want my bets, you can get all of those for free, but the betting guide gives you all of the best information to make your own picks. You can get that at the link in my bio. It's $20. I think it's a tool that's absolutely worth it. So Nick, for categories, are we doing for this coming week again, or are we going back on this last week?
Hey, that's up to you. I had it prepared for, best game of week 1, blah, blah, blah. But it feels like we really touched on all of that already. You know what I mean? Like, like we could go like ugliest game, Air Force Merrimack was going to be my pick. But everything else we kind of really touched on. So maybe we go for next week.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do next week then. Best game next week. I think the best game, maybe not the most best game, Colorado at Nebraska. I think that game is going to be so much fun. I think that game is going to be unbelievable. So for me, give me Colorado and Nebraska. Dylan Raiola and Shedeur Sanders, I think, are going to put on a fucking show.
I'll go Boise State, Oregon.
Okay.
I think Oregon showed vulnerability, and I think Boise State showed that they can put up a lot of points. I don't think Oregon's defense is necessarily their flashy, big, this is why Oregon's great. Part of their team. I think that their offense is supposed to be that. And Idaho's defense can't be good, and they only put up 24 points. So I think with an 18-point spread, there's potential for some really fun level craziness in that game. So I'll pick that one.
All right. What about your ugliest game for the weekend?
I'm looking at Duke Northwestern.
That was my initial one that jumped off the page to me. I was like, ew, dude.
Power 5 matchup, that looks like that would be bad. And I know like Northwestern last week might have been your pick for that already. And that game did end up being ugly. They scored
that game was
19
gross.
points total. So yeah, that's probably the right answer. But if I went the Air Force Merrimack route where literally both teams had like 120 yards combined, if I'm trying to find that game, like, I don't know. I would have to search for something gross and disgusting like Central Michigan, FIU, like Gardner Webb, I don't know. So I guess I'll just go Northwestern Duke.
Yeah, I don't hate that one at all. One that I think sneaky ugly, Pitt Cincinnati. I think Pitt Cincinnati is going to be a gross game. Not a fan of either of those rosters. Who's on upset alert this week, Nick? Your favorite or your biggest upset that you'll pick?
Yeah, so part of me would want to say that Oregon's on upset alert because I think they are, but if it is in the scenario of I'm actually picking it to happen, I am not willing to do that. I would say probably Texas. I would say, as far as spread goes, being an underdog, I think going into the big house, Texas got to beat Michigan. They were in a big spot against Alabama this week last year, and they won. People are going to be all over Texas because Texas looked really good. Texas looked relatively flawless, I would say. A lot of other teams showcased some flaws. Texas didn't really show any. Michigan definitely showed some flaws. And I think a lot of people tired of Michigan, blah, 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 Connor Stallions. Public money is going to be all over Texas in that spot. And I like Michigan. I like them.
I'm going to take Cal over Auburn. Cal didn't look incredible last week. They played UC Irvine, and then Auburn played Alabama A&M and beat the hell out of them like 70-3. I still am not a fan. They're 13.5-point favorite. That's kind of surprising to me. So I'm going to go Cal over Auburn. That game is at Cal, which I think, could lead to some weird ass shit. So give me that one.
I like that.
All right. The best uniform matchup. There are a lot here that I think could be like pretty solid. But for me, it's going to be, I wanted to say USF at Alabama because I kind of like that game quite a bit. But I'm actually going to go South Carolina, Kentucky. The Reds and the garnet and the blue, classic SEC game. So I'm going that for my best uniform matchup.
I like that. I'll go. I'm going to go Sam Houston versus UCF as my best uniform matchup. Ooh. Sam Houston has some decent sneaky jerseys, sneaky like Netherlands style with the orange and whatnot. And then UCF obviously has a bunch of options, and all of them pretty much look really cool. So
they're all blacks that they announced look sick.
Yeah. So like, I don't know what they're going to be wearing. I don't know. It's on a limb that I'm picking this, but I think those should mesh pretty well.
Yep. Best environment. I don't like to double dip on best environment and best game. However, night kickoff at Nebraska, Colorado, Nebraska, these two teams hate each other. I think in terms of environment, that's going to be the best environment in college football next week.
That's my pick as well. Has to be.
Yep. And then best individual performance. This is interesting. Who do you think is going to go the hell off this weekend, Nick?
Yeah, it's tough because I wrote that in there assuming that we were going to be talking about last week, but we covered Genty and McMillan that went crazy. Obviously, when we are in a scenario where there's teams playing against not great teams, we're going to see something crazy. So maybe I'll say like Luther Burden against Buffalo goes for 280 yards, 4 touchdowns. Maybe that's my pick.
Mine is going to be, I'm going to pick a comeback game from Dylan Gabriel. I know Oregon only put up 24 points. He completed 83% of his passes for 380 yards and no interceptions. And Oregon only put up 24 points.
Boise State let up 45 points. So yeah, that's a decent pick. Yeah.
I think Dylan Gabriel could go nuclear. So give me that. All right. we will do our week 2 preview. If you guys are going to any week 2 games, use promo code SmashHitSports on SeatGeek to get $20 off your first purchase. That is SmashHitSports, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. There are 3 games on Friday. They all kind of stink. BYU, SMU might maybe be feisty, but nothing that I'm really going to be like hyper focused on. Saturday, pretty big slate. So Oklahoma State -7 at Arkansas. Arkansas destroyed Arkansas Pine Bluff. We didn't talk about them. And then Oklahoma State played a really good game against South Dakota State, who was your FCS national champion last season. That being said, give me Oklahoma State here by, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Arkansas, I think, looked surprisingly good given how just down I was on them. That I was like, I know it's against a bad team and whatnot, but that spread is interesting. It's a 7-point line. They're playing it at Arkansas. I think we could see something crazy there, but I'm also going to go Oklahoma State, but hesitantly.
That's fair. Kansas State -9.5 at Tulane. I like Tulane to cover the number here, but I think Kansas State wins. This game, Tulane's got a good defense. Kansas State has a good defense. They both run the ball well. Like, this game could be kind of ugly in terms of, how the visual of it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, sneaky could have been best uniform game.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I'll go Kansas State. These are 2 really tough ones that I'm not really confident in at all because Tulane, I saw their crowd this past weekend. They looked rowdy as hell. They're going to go all out for this game. It's in Tulane. I don't know. 10 points, though. Maybe big enough.
Yep.
Big against Kansas State.
And Tulane has been, like, they've fucked up some Power 5 teams before.
Yeah.
All right. Texas -7 at Michigan. This is the biggest no-brainer for me. Texas is going to beat the fucking brakes off of Michigan this weekend. Michigan's offense looked so bad against Fresno State. They could not move the ball. I have zero faith in this Michigan team. I think they score less than 14 points. I think Texas beats them by 3+ touchdowns. I don't think this game is even going to be close.
I think we're going to look at Texas next weekend, and I think we're probably going to say, Michigan's defense is legit. Maybe their offense isn't great, but I think a lot of people are assuming, Texas offensively is just going to be a juggernaut. I think we have to give Big House Michigan in a big spot like this a lot of credit because they have so much talent on that defense. I think, especially in a big game, when you get to beat Texas at home, coming off a natty, defend the freaking house. I think defensively they're going to look really good. Low scoring game. Love the under here. I think I'm going to go with Michigan just because I'm afraid that the public is going to be 90+% on Texas. I think 90+%. I think it's one of those that people are not even thinking about.
That is fair. All right. Auburn at Cal. I already gave my piece on Cal as my upset pick, and I'm going to ride with that. I like Cal at home here against Auburn.
Love it. I love it. I hope it happens. I'm also low on Auburn, but I'm going to go with Auburn.
All right, Nick, we differ in 2 of the 4 games already. Oh, speaking of, quick recap of last week. I went 8-2. Nick went 7-3. A good first outing. I mean, we didn't have a ton of games to pick, so not an incredibly difficult slate. But Nick, we're back like we never left.
7-3 with I picked fucking Clemson to beat Georgia. So
yeah. Hey, we're good.
We're fine. Good. We're fine.
All right. Iowa State at Iowa. This game could be gross. This could be 10-7.
It could be. But Iowa's offense, I will say, looks a little bit better than it has in the past. And it's so hard to make judgment calls like that in week 1. We've been doing it this episode of the pod, and we're trying not to, but I'm willing to say that I'm like, I saw little improvements here and there. This will probably still be 10-7, but I like Iowa. I think Iowa has a historically good defense. Did they let up a point? I don't think so.
Nope, 40-0.
Yeah, I think this is a century level good defense that Iowa has this year.
I am riding with Iowa State. I don't have a ton of confidence in this because Iowa State did not look good last weekend, but I think that Iowa might be a little bit of Fugazi, putting up numbers where they didn't really need to in that game because the first half was still ugly for Iowa. So,
True.
but they had more wide receiver touchdowns in the second half of that game than they did either of the last 2 seasons,
Combined
which is
or in a game?
combined. No,
Combined.
So the all of 2023, they had 3 wide receiver touchdowns. They had 3 in the second half this week. And in 2022, they had 2 wide receiver touchdowns the entire season. They had 3 in the second half this week. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I did not know that stat, but they looked
Hey.
like a real team a little bit. Like, you know,
brand new Hawkeyes. Brand new
they
Hawkeyes.
look like real. You're like, hey, they exist. They're not just this figment of nonsense.
Yep.
Okay.
Michigan State at Maryland.
I feel like I know what you want to do.
I want to pick Michigan State in this spot so bad. And they looked like absolute dog piss against FAU. Nothing about that team gives me any sort of confidence at all. I have to pick them. I have to pick them. In my heart of hearts, I have to pick them, and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And when this pick loses next week, I'm only going to be able to blame myself because this is a stupid decision. I'm picking Michigan State, but for the record, I hate this pick.
Yeah. Cody hates this pick. Worst pick of his life, he says. I agree, probably. You know, give me Maryland.
and I agree that he's an idiot.
Yeah, give me Maryland. I mean, again, I was so much lower on Michigan State than it felt like a lot of people. But yeah, gross team. And they can't fucking rebound from the Mel Tucker era quickly like people thought, in my opinion. Now, let's say they win and you're a genius. Well, I'll admit it, but no, give me Maryland.
Yep. Kansas at Illinois. This game could be weird.
Trappy field.
Could be weird.
Cody, this is a trap game.
I agree. I'm picking Kansas because their roster, top to bottom, is just better than Illinois'. But this game, we could have put this game in our upset very easily. Illinois, they've won games like this before.
It's just this is one where everyone is so behind Kansas, and Illinois is just an afterthought as far as Power 5 teams go. The spread being 5.5, like, dude, that's crazy.
That is trappy as
That's
fuck.
Crazy low. The smart play here is Illinois, but I don't want to be the guy that picks Illinois because they played this game last year. I picked Illinois. Illinois did not win. Of course, they didn't win. So I'm not able to pick Illinois this year. But boy, oh boy, does that have trap written all over it.
This seems like a Kansas wins on a field goal at the end of the game, and we're just like, wait, does Kansas suck? Like, are we sure about Kansas?
Vegas knows something.
Yep. Colorado at Nebraska. I have to go with the Huskers here. I will say, Shedeur Sanders looked fucking great on Thursday night. He looked outstanding. And Travis Hunter looked like potentially the best player in college football. He missed 2 snaps the entire game, went out, scored 3 touchdowns. That touchdown he had, his third, that catch was just absurd, dude. I mean, just an absolute circus play. But I have to go with the Nebraska here. I just think they're going to be able to get pressure on Colorado's offensive line. But more importantly, Colorado's defensive line is dog shit. If they can't get to Raiola, he's going to tear them apart. And if they can't stop the run, they have no shot. So give me Nebraska in this one.
Yeah, I'm also going to pick Nebraska. I will be rooting for Colorado as much as people are going to hate that. I just can't confidently pick Colorado in this game until I see what happens in this game. Future Colorado rides on this game because they might, you're saying, they might just yeah, you know what I mean? Shedeur Sanders gets fucking popped in the dome a couple times, just absolutely concussed because they can't block for him. And that defense just is so bad that Nebraska crushes them. I'd be like, well, I'm such an idiot for picking Colorado without knowing what they're going to be. So I got to go Nebraska.
I will say, even if Colorado comes in and this is a tight game and say they lose by a touchdown or whatever, I would still be high on Colorado. Like this is a tough spot. They have a lot of tough spots on their schedule, and to go into Nebraska at night, heated rivalry, and like compete, I think that shows improvement in where this Colorado program was from last year to this year.
Agreed.
Yeah. Tennessee -7.5 at NC State. I think this will be a bloodbath. NC State looked like dog shit. They looked so bad on, what was that, Thursday night? I thought legitimately that they had a shot to lose that game.
Same.
Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava, start the Heisman campaign, buddy. Get ready to play Rocky Top. It's going to be loud.
Yeah, I mean, it's in NC State. I think NC State's going to rebound really aggressively, but I just don't think that these ACC teams warrant my respect right now. So I really do think like NC State, like McCall looked so bad for 3 quarters, 2.5 quarters, and then things got better. KC Concepcion looked really good. This NC State roster is still talented. Like
Concepcion is so good.
Yeah, he's insane.
So good.
He's amazing, and he's a true sophomore. But yeah, so I think this could be like a sneaky, like, oh my god, NC State down 4 driving, like they could win, like Tennessee on upset watch, and then it just fizzles out. Tennessee wins, but we're kind of thinking like, whoa, wasn't expecting that to be that close. Like I think I might take NC State spread.
Ooh, I don't hate that. I don't hate that, Nick. Last game. Boise State at Oregon. Nick, them making this a 10 o'clock kickoff is just such a blessing.
Yeah.
It's such a blessing because there might be my like hot take on this game. There legitimately might be 90 points scored, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. It's going to be so much fun. Give me Oregon.
Say it again. Oregon.
Give me Oregon. Like they're an 18-point favorite. They're going to win this game, but this game could be so much fun to watch late night, little Pac-12 Mountain West after dark.
It's the same vibe as Arizona, New Mexico, a game that the Notre Dame game, ends, and I'm thinking like, college football's over for the day. Let's just, whatever else is on, throw it on. We'll just talk while that's on. And it ends up being this game where it's just touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. The New Mexico quarterback is like electric, and it was just so much fun. And it was so late. It was 1 a.m. I'm watching that game, almost 2 a.m. I'm watching that game. I love the fact that we're going to get that again this Saturday. I'm going to be watching that game in full, I'm guessing, barring someone convincing me to go out, but I'm going to veto that. So, yeah, I can't go Boise State, but I love them on the spread. This is like one of those reverse things where people are like, well, Oregon only, they only won by 10 against Idaho. Like, there's no way they win by 18 against Boise State. It's like, well, there's a reason it's 18. There's a reason.
Yeah.
It's going. Yeah. It means it's freaking gonna be 18 or more. So, which is disappointing because I thought Boise State was going to get a lot more respect than that. So,
I agree. I was kind of surprised at this line. That being said, Nick, before we end this, Boston College 14, Florida State 6 at halftime.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Keep an eye out. If we may have to record an emergency what the hell is going on in Tallahassee later tonight. So if there is anything after this point at this portion of the podcast, just know that Florida State got beat. So, all right, that being said, I'm going to do the sign off anyway, but make sure you subscribe to the podcast. The best way to help us out is to be a friend, tell a friend. If you enjoy the show, send it to somebody else who knows college football, is an absolute ball watcher, and give that as a gift from you to them, this podcast. So thank you, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Peace.